Cameron Hayes watched his boss check his phone for the fifth time in 10 minutes, and something twisted in his stomach. Alexander Chen-Rodriguez never got distracted during their Friday afternoon meetings. He ran Meridian AI with laser focus, making million-dollar decisions about government contracts without breaking a sweat. But right now, sitting across from Cameron in his glass-walled office, overlooking the San Francisco Bay, Alex looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The late afternoon fog was rolling in from the Pacific, wrapping around the towers of downtown like a gray blanket. Cameron had worked as Alex's executive assistant for 3 years, long enough to know that when Alex tapped his Mont Blanc pen 3 times against his desk, something was eating at him. Long enough to memorize the way Alex's dark eyes would dart to the window when he was stressed. Long enough to fall completely, hopelessly in love with the man who could never be his. "Everything okay?" Cameron asked, keeping his voice carefully neutral. Alex's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Just my mother reminding me about dinner tonight." His voice carried that particular strain Cameron had learned to recognize, the tone Alex used when he was trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. "Dinner sounds nice," Cameron replied, though he already knew it wouldn't be. Alex laughed, but there was no humor in it whatsoever. "It's another setup. 3rd one this month. This time it's the daughter of my father's business partner. Apparently, she went to Stanford and speaks 3 languages." The words hit Cameron like a physical blow, but he kept his expression perfectly composed. His heart hammered against his ribs as he watched Alex run a hand through his black hair, messing up the careful styling he'd spent time on that morning. Cameron knew because he'd arrived early and caught Alex in the bathroom mirror, trying to tame a stubborn cowlick. "She sounds accomplished," Cameron managed to say, hating how neutral he sounded when everything inside him was screaming. Alex looked at him then, really looked at him, and for a moment Cameron thought he saw something flicker in those dark eyes. Something that made his breath catch in his throat. But then Alex's phone buzzed with a text, and whatever Cameron thought he'd seen disappeared. "I should get going," Alex said, standing and straightening his tie. "Need to go home and change into something my family will approve of. Something that says responsible son instead of tech entrepreneur who works too many hours." Cameron watched him gather his things, wanting desperately to say something, anything, that might make Alex realize what he was doing to himself. Instead, he nodded and said, "Have a good weekend, Alex." The words felt like glass in his throat. 3 hours later, Cameron was halfway through a sad dinner of leftover Thai food in his tiny Mission District apartment when his phone lit up with Alex's name. The text was simple but spoke volumes. "Help. Scale of 1 to 10. This is a -50. Send backup or a natural disaster. Anything." Cameron stared at the message for exactly 2 seconds before grabbing his jacket. "On my way. Client emergency with the Pentagon contract." Alex's response came instantly. "You're a lifesaver. Chez Laurent on Union Square." As Cameron rushed through the foggy San Francisco streets, weaving between tourists and late commuters, one thought kept echoing in his mind. Tonight would change everything, and he had no idea if that was a blessing or a curse. Don't miss what happens next in this emotional journey of hidden love and courage. Subscribe to Heart Stories for more real tales that will touch your soul. Chez Laurent was exactly the kind of restaurant where everything cost too much, and the lighting was designed to make everyone look sophisticated. Cameron had picked Alex up from business dinners here before, back when they were courting venture capitalists who wanted to see their money being spent on the right kind of image. Now he walked through the heavy glass doors with his heart pounding, scanning the dining room for Alex's familiar silhouette. There he was, sitting at a corner table with a stunning woman in her late 20s. She had the kind of polished beauty that came from expensive schools and even more expensive skincare. Her laugh was musical as she gestured with manicured hands, completely absorbed in whatever story she was telling. Alex sat across from her, his smile polite, but his posture screaming discomfort to anyone who knew how to read the signs. Cameron straightened his shoulders and walked over, trying to look official and urgent instead of jealous and desperate. "Alexander, thank goodness I found you," he said, his voice carrying just enough worry to sound convincing. "We have a situation with the Pentagon contract." The woman looked up with mild surprise, her green eyes assessing Cameron with the casual interest of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. "Liam, what's wrong?" Alex asked. And the relief that flooded his face made Cameron feel like he was drowning and being rescued simultaneously. Their primary systems administrator just called from the data center. "We're showing anomalies in the security protocols that could trigger a federal review. I know it's your evening off, but I can't authorize the emergency patches without your digital signature." It was complete fabrication, but Cameron had learned to think on his feet during his 3 years of working in tech. The woman, who Alex had introduced as Isabella Mendoza, set down her wine glass with a slight frown. "Surely this can wait until Monday," she said, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who'd never had to worry about losing a paycheck. $12 million in federal contracts can't wait," Alex said smoothly, already standing. He turned to Isabella with practiced regret that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Isabella. Running a defense contractor means emergencies don't follow a social calendar. You understand how important national security is?" Isabella's perfectly painted lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded graciously. "Of course, though I have to say, I'm disappointed. My father specifically wanted me to get to know you better tonight." Alex's smile became slightly strained at the mention of her father, and Cameron caught the subtle tension in his shoulders. "Please give him my regards," Alex replied. "Maybe we can reschedule when things calm down at the office." He grabbed his jacket and walked toward the exit without looking back, leaving Isabella sitting alone at the table with her untouched dessert and wounded pride. The cool November air hit them as they stepped onto Union Square. The fog had thickened while they were inside, turning the streetlights into soft halos and muffling the sounds of the city. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Alex turned to Cameron and suddenly he was laughing. Really laughing. The kind that made his whole face light up and transformed him from composed CEO into something much more human and vulnerable. "There is no Pentagon emergency, is there?" Alex asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Cameron tried to look innocent, but Alex shook his head with a grin that made Cameron's chest tight with something he didn't dare name. "Cameron Hayes, did you just fabricate an entire national security crisis to rescue me from dinner with the daughter of my father's biggest investor? You texted for help." Cameron said simply, "I helped." Alex stared at him for a long moment, and Cameron couldn't read his expression in the dim light filtered through the fog. Then Alex did something completely unexpected. He hugged Cameron, just wrapped his arms around him right there on the sidewalk outside one of San Francisco's most exclusive restaurants. Cameron froze for a heartbeat before hugging back, breathing in the scent of Alex's cologne and trying not to think about how perfectly Alex fit against him. "Thank you," Alex said quietly. "You have no idea how much I needed that rescue." When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with something that might have been gratitude or might have been something else entirely. "Want to get real dinner?" Cameron asked before he could stop himself. That place looked like they were serving food for people who don't actually eat. Alex laughed again, and the sound was like music in the fog-wrapped streets. "I would love that." "Lead the way." They ended up at Eddie's Diner in the Castro, a 24-hour place that served breakfast all day and had been a neighborhood institution since the 1970s. It was the opposite of Chez Laurent in every way, with mismatched chairs, a jukebox that played everything from Donna Summer to current pop hits, and rainbow flags visible through the windows. Cameron had been coming here since he moved to San Francisco, back when he was fresh out of college and trying to figure out who he was in a city that promised acceptance, but still required courage. Alex slid into the booth across from Cameron, looking completely out of place in his expensive suit and Italian shoes, but he was smiling as he picked up the worn, laminated menu. "I haven't been to a place like this in years," he said, and there was something wistful in his voice. "Too real for the people I usually have dinner with." He glanced up at Cameron. "That sounded terrible. I don't mean you're not real. I mean, I know what you meant," Cameron said, and he did. In 3 years of working together, he'd watched Alex navigate a world of investors and board meetings where authenticity was carefully managed and vulnerability was seen as weakness. Here in this diner, Surrounded by the easy acceptance of the Castro district, Alex looked more relaxed than Cameron had seen him in months. Sometimes the most important rescues aren't from bad dates, but from the versions of ourselves we think we have to be to survive in a world that doesn't always understand who we really are. Over the next month, the rescue missions became a pattern that Cameron both treasured and dreaded. Alex's mother would arrange another carefully orchestrated meeting with another accomplished woman from their social circle. Alex would text Cameron with increasingly creative descriptions of his discomfort, and Cameron would arrive with some invented crisis that required immediate attention. Each time, they'd end up somewhere in the Castro afterward, talking until late into the night about everything and nothing. Those nights were the best and worst of Cameron's life. Best because he got to see the real Alex, the one who quoted obscure poetry and admitted to reading romance novels on his Kindle, the Alex who worried about whether his company's AI technology might be used for purposes he couldn't control, who sent anonymous donations to LGBTQ+ youth organizations and pretended it was just good corporate citizenship. Worse because every shared laugh and meaningful glance felt like torture when Cameron knew it could never lead anywhere. They talked about growing up different in families that loved them but didn't always understand them. Alex told him about the pressure of being the only son in a family where success was measured in stock portfolios and social connections, where bringing home the wrong person could destroy carefully built business relationships. Cameron shared stories about Salem, Oregon, about a father who preached acceptance on Sundays but couldn't accept his own son's truth. The more time they spent together, the harder Cameron fell. And sometimes, in those quiet moments at whatever diner or coffee shop they'd discovered, he thought maybe Alex felt something too. The way Alex would lean closer when Cameron was explaining something, how their hands would brush when reaching for sugar packets, the way Alex would look at him like he was saying something profound when Cameron was just talking about his favorite books. But Cameron never said anything. Alex was his boss, and more than that, Alex was struggling with his own family's expectations in ways that Cameron understood all too painfully. Crossing that line could destroy the fragile trust they'd built, could take away the one space where Alex felt safe to be himself. Then came the evening that shifted everything. Alex had been set up with Victoria Chen, a corporate lawyer whose family had known Alex's since childhood. Cameron arrived at the usual time to find them deep in conversation at a wine bar in Nob Hill. But when Alex saw him approach with his practice story about server crashes and angry clients, something was different. Alex looked genuinely torn, genuinely conflicted about being rescued. Victoria was brilliant and funny and seemed to actually understand the pressures Alex faced in ways the other women hadn't. She talked about the challenges of being Asian American in corporate law, about family expectations and the weight of representing not just yourself, but everyone who looks like you. Cameron watched Alex respond with real engagement, saw him laugh genuinely at her stories about impossible clients and demanding partners. For the first time, Cameron's rescue felt like an intrusion rather than a favor. When they left the bar, Alex was quieter than usual, thoughtful in a way that made Cameron's stomach twist with something that might have been dread. "I think I might give Victoria another chance," Alex said as they walked through the fog-shrouded streets. "She gets it, you know, the family stuff, the pressure to be perfect." It felt different talking to her. Cameron nodded and made appropriate responses, but inside he felt something cracking. He'd always known this day would come, when Alex would meet someone who could give him everything Cameron couldn't. Someone who fit into Alex's world, who wouldn't complicate his relationship with his family or his position at the company. Someone who made sense in ways that Cameron, the assistant from Oregon with student loans and a studio apartment, never could. Over the next 2 weeks, Alex went on 3 more dates with Victoria. He came back to the office glowing each time, talking about the restaurants they'd tried, how easy conversation felt with her, how his mother had actually approved when he'd mentioned Victoria's family name. Cameron smiled and nodded and felt pieces of his heart break off with each shared detail. "I think she might be the one," Alex said one Friday afternoon, his voice filled with wonder and something that might have been relief. "Is that crazy to think after just 2 weeks? When you know, right?" Right, Cameron agreed. Because what else could he say? He watched Alex gather his things for another weekend that wouldn't include desperate text messages or invented emergencies. Another weekend where Cameron wouldn't get to see the real Alex, wouldn't get to pretend for a few hours that they were something more than boss and employee. That night, Cameron sat in his apartment, staring at the fog rolling past his window, and made a decision he'd been avoiding for months. He couldn't keep doing this. Couldn't keep being the friend who helped Alex figure out his love life while his own heart slowly shattered. There was a position opening at a startup in Silicon Valley, better pay and new challenges. But most importantly, distance from the man he loved but couldn't have. It was time to stop rescuing Alex from his life and start saving himself from his own. Learning to recognize when love means letting go is one of the hardest lessons life teaches us, especially when holding on feels like the only thing keeping us anchored to hope. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of San Francisco fog that seemed to seep into your bones. Cameron had printed his resignation letter 3 times, his hands shaking each time he signed it. The envelope sat on Alex's desk like a small bomb, waiting to detonate everything they'd built together over 3 years of shared coffee runs and late-night strategy sessions. Cameron watched through the glass walls as Alex arrived at his usual time, carrying 2 cups from the coffee shop downstairs. One for him, one for Cameron, the same ritual they'd maintained since Cameron's first week on the job. Alex looked rested and happy in a way that made Cameron's chest tight with a mixture of love and loss. He was humming something under his breath, probably a song Victoria had introduced him to. Then Alex saw the envelope. Cameron watched his face change, watched the humming stop, and his whole body go still. Alex picked up the letter with careful fingers, turned it over to see his name written in Cameron's careful handwriting. For a moment, he just stared at it, and Cameron could see him trying to process what this might mean. Cameron, Alex called softly, and there was something in his voice Cameron had never heard before, a kind of uncertainty that made him look younger and more vulnerable than he had any right to. "What is this?" "We should probably talk in your office," Cameron said, standing on legs that felt unsteady. Alex nodded and walked inside, still holding both coffee cups and the unopened envelope. Cameron followed and closed the door behind them, his mouth dry as desert sand. "Go ahead," Alex said quietly, settling into his chair without taking off his jacket. "Open it." His hands trembled slightly as he tore open the envelope and pulled out the letter. Cameron watched his eyes move across the words: resignation and 2 weeks' notice and new opportunity, and grateful for everything. When Alex looked up, his face had gone pale beneath his usually warm complexion. "You're leaving," he said, and it wasn't a question. Cameron had never heard Alex's voice sound so small, so hurt. The coffee cups sat forgotten on his desk, steam rising from them like incense. "Tech Flow Dynamics made me an offer," Cameron explained, the words he'd rehearsed all weekend sounding hollow in the quiet office. "It's a significant step up, better pay, more responsibility. I think it's time for me to move on, grow my career in new directions." "Move on," Alex repeated slowly, setting the letter down with shaking fingers. "Because of Victoria." Cameron blinked, caught off guard. He hadn't expected Alex to make that connection so quickly, hadn't expected the pain that flashed across Alex's features. "What?" Cameron started, but Alex cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Don't lie to me." Cameron, his voice was raw now, hurt bleeding through his usual professional composure. "These past 3 years, you've never once mentioned wanting to leave Meridian. Never complained about your role or your salary or lack of advancement opportunities. Now Victoria comes along and suddenly you're handing me a resignation letter on a Monday morning. It's not about her," Cameron said, but the words sounded unconvincing even to his own ears. Alex stood up abruptly, the letter crumpling slightly in his grip. His dark eyes were blazing now, demanding honesty Cameron wasn't sure he could give. "Then what is it about?" Alex asked, his voice rising. "Tell me the truth." "Cameron, why are you really leaving?" The office felt too small suddenly. the fog pressing against the windows like it was trying to get in. Cameron could see the Bay Bridge in the distance, cars moving across it like tiny ants, people going about their Monday mornings completely unaware that his world was falling apart in this glass box suspended above the city. "Because I can't do this anymore," Cameron said quietly, the words torn from somewhere deep in his chest. "Can't do what?" Alex demanded. "Your job, you're the best assistant I've ever had. If this is about money, I can offer you a raise, equity options, whatever you need. It's not about money." Cameron's voice came out rougher than intended, years of careful control finally cracking. "It's not about career advancement or new opportunities. It's about coming into this office every single day and being professional when all I want to do is tell you how I really feel. It's about listening to you talk about Victoria and how perfect she is for you and how your mother finally approves of someone and having to smile and nod when it's killing me inside." Alex's anger seemed to freeze mid-expression, his face shifting to something Cameron couldn't read in the gray morning light. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm saying I'm in love with you," Cameron said, and 3 years of careful silence shattered like glass. "I've been in love with you since my second month here, when you stayed late to help me understand the client database, even though you had dinner plans with investors. I fell in love with your terrible jokes during Monday morning meetings, with the way you remember everyone's coffee orders, with how you donated your bonus to LGBTQ+ youth shelters and thought no one would notice." The words kept coming, years of suppressed feelings pouring out like water through a broken dam. "I fell in love with those rescue missions because they were the only times I got to see the real you. Not the CEO who has to have all the answers. I got to be the person you trusted when everything felt impossible, even if it was just for a few hours. But then Victoria came along, and she's perfect for you in ways I never could be. She understands your world, fits into your family's expectations, won't complicate your life or your business relationships. She's what you deserve. And I'm just the guy who brings you coffee and manages your calendar and was stupid enough to fall in love with his boss." The silence that followed was deafening. Alex stood perfectly still, staring at Cameron like he was seeing him for the first time. Outside, the fog had begun to lift slightly, revealing glimpses of the city below. But inside the office, everything felt suspended, waiting. Sometimes the most terrifying conversations are the ones that force us to confront the difference between the life we're living and the life our hearts are begging us to choose. "Are you finished?" Alex asked finally, his voice steady but his hands trembling where they gripped the edge of his desk. Cameron nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He'd done it now, destroyed everything they'd built together, their professional relationship, their friendship. All of it gone because he couldn't keep his feelings buried where they belonged. "Good," Alex said, moving around his desk to stand directly in front of Cameron. "Because now it's my turn to talk, and you're going to listen to every single word." Cameron's breath caught in his throat as Alex stepped closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with coffee and morning fog. "I broke up with Victoria yesterday," Alex said quietly, and Cameron's brain stuttered to a complete stop. "What?" he managed to whisper. Alex's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile but wasn't sadness either. "I ended things with her after our Sunday brunch in Sausalito. She's a wonderful woman, brilliant and kind, and everything my family could want from me. But I realized something during our 3 weeks together. I kept comparing her to you. Every joke she made, I wondered if you would have found it funnier. Every restaurant we went to, I wished you were sitting across from me instead, making those observations about people that always make me laugh. Every time she reached for my hand, I pulled away because it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like coming home the way being with you does." Cameron stared at him, afraid to believe what he was hearing. "But you seem so happy," he said. "You talked about her like she might be the one." Alex ran a hand through his hair, messing up the careful styling Cameron had watched him perfect in the bathroom mirror that morning, 3 hours ago. I was trying to convince myself, Alex admitted, and Cameron could hear the frustration in his voice. Do you know how long I've been in love with you, Cameron? Since you brought me soup when I had the flu during your first winter here. You didn't have to do that. It wasn't in your job description. But you showed up at my apartment with homemade chicken noodle soup and stayed to make sure I ate it because you were worried I wasn't taking care of myself. Cameron's mind flashed back to that day 18 months ago. Alex had looked miserable with a fever and congestion, and Cameron had spent half the night researching the best remedies online, finally settling on his grandmother's soup recipe. He'd been terrified of overstepping boundaries, but Alex had looked so grateful and relieved that Cameron had known he'd made the right choice. That was a year and a half ago, Cameron said slowly. Alex nodded, his eyes never leaving Cameron's face. I know exactly how long it's been. I've counted every day since then, wondering if you felt anything for me beyond professional respect and friendship. Every time you rescued me from those dinners, I hoped maybe you were jealous. Maybe you wanted me for yourself, but you never said anything, never gave me any sign that I wasn't just projecting my own feelings onto our friendship. Because you're my boss, Cameron said, his voice cracking slightly. Because crossing that line could destroy your reputation, could complicate everything you have built with the Meridian. Because I thought I was crazy to imagine someone like you could ever see me as anything more than your assistant. And I thought the same thing, Alex said softly, reaching out to take Cameron's hand. His fingers were warm and steady, anchoring Cameron to this moment that felt too impossible to be real. So when Victoria came along and seemed to genuinely understand the pressures I face, I decided to give us a real chance. I thought maybe I'd been building you up in my head, that if I just tried harder with someone appropriate, someone who made sense on paper, I'd realize what I felt for you was just loneliness and proximity. But it didn't work, Cameron said, hardly daring to breathe. Alex shook his head, his thumb tracing gentle circles on Cameron's knuckles. Every moment with her just made me miss you more. Made me realize that love isn't about finding someone who fits the life you think you're supposed to want. It's about finding someone who makes you want to build a life brave enough to hold both of your authentic selves. Alex's free hand came up to cup Cameron's face, and Cameron leaned into the touch like he'd been starving for it. Now you're trying to leave me because you think I chose someone else, Alex continued. Now I'm standing here terrified that I've already lost you. That resignation letter says 2 weeks, Cameron. Were you even going to tell me how you felt? Or were you just going to walk away and let me spend the rest of my life wondering what I could have done differently? I didn't think I had the right, Cameron admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. You're Alexander Chen-Rodriguez. You built a tech empire that's changing how governments think about artificial intelligence. You're on magazine covers and keynote speaking circuits. What could I possibly offer someone like you? You, Alex said simply, and the word hit Cameron like a physical force. Just you. The person who knows exactly how I take my coffee and reminds me to eat lunch when I get lost in code reviews. The person who listens to my terrible day and finds ways to make me laugh about impossible clients in board meeting politics. The person who drops everything to rescue me from situations where I have to pretend to be someone I'm not, even when it means fabricating elaborate lies about national security crises. They both laughed at that, a sound somewhere between relief and disbelief. Alex's thumb brushed across Cameron's cheek, wiping away a tear Cameron hadn't realized had fallen. I'm sorry I put you through watching me date Victoria. I'm sorry I talked about her when I should have been honest about my feelings. I'm sorry I've been a coward for 18 months. Too scared of losing what we had to risk everything for what we could have. We've both been cowards, Cameron said, covering Alex's hand with his own. Then let's be brave now, Alex said, taking a shaky breath. I love you. Cameron Hayes. I'm in love with you. And if you still want to take that position at TechFlow, I'll understand. But please don't leave because you think I don't want you here. Because I do. More than anything I've ever wanted in my life. Cameron looked at Alex's face, at the hope and fear mixed together in his expression, and felt something settle into place in his chest. I'm still taking the job, he said, and watched Alex's face begin to fall. But not because I don't want you, because if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. I can't be your employee and your boyfriend. It wouldn't be fair to you or the company or us. Understanding dawned in Alex's eyes, followed by something that looked like relief mixed with awe. So you'd leave Meridian to be with me, he asked. Cameron smiled, feeling lighter than he had in months. I'd do anything to be with you. I've spent 3 years loving you from across a desk, pretending that professional distance was enough. I'm done with distance. Alex, I'm done with pretending that what I feel for you is anything less than everything. Then Alex kissed him, soft and tentative at first, then deeper when Cameron responded by pulling him closer. Alex tasted like coffee and possibility, and for a moment Cameron couldn't think about anything except the fact that this was really happening. Alex was kissing him in his office on a foggy Monday morning, and the world hadn't ended. It felt like everything was just beginning. 6 months later, Cameron stood in the storefront that would become Castro Books and Coffee, watching Alex hang a rainbow flag in the front window. The space smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings, with built-in bookshelves waiting to be filled and a coffee counter ready for the barista they'd hired to start next week. Alex had stepped down as CEO of Meridian to focus on this project, bringing in his former CTO to run the company while he explored what it meant to build something that mattered to their community. What do you think? Alex asked, slipping his hand into Cameron's as they looked around at their shared dream taking physical form. Cameron thought about the journey that had brought them here, about rescue missions that had turned into something much more important than either of them had expected, about learning that sometimes the most powerful act of love is creating space for someone to be authentically themselves. I think we rescued each other, Cameron said finally, from lives that looked successful on the outside but felt incomplete on the inside, resting from the fear that being our true selves meant being alone, from settling for relationships that made sense to everyone except our hearts. Sometimes the person you're meant to love is right in front of you, hidden behind professional boundaries and unspoken fears. Sometimes building a life together means having the courage to leave behind the safety of what you know for the possibility of what could be. Cameron and Alex had learned that love isn't just about finding someone who accepts you. It's about finding someone who inspires you to become the most authentic version of yourself. Have you ever had to choose between safety and authenticity in your own relationships? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Heart Stories for more real tales about love, courage, and the power of choosing yourself over other people's expectations.